Welcome to the I Love Recruiting podcast with your host, Adam Roach.
Welcome back, everybody, to the I Love Recruiting podcast. I am your host, Adam Roach, and today I have a very, very special guest with us here. This man needs absolutely no introduction. However, I'm going to give him one because, well, in my opinion, he is a badass. He is someone that I've met through many organizations, whether that was GoBundance, whether that was through Leaf, now better known as Exchange, where we learned how to do appreciative inquiries together. He runs what's called Front Row and Front Row Dads, and incredible organizations. Everybody, give a big, loud welcome to Mr. Jon Vroman. Johnny, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, man. I'm good. I've been looking forward to catching up with you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for jumping on here with us.
Yeah, this will be fun, man.
This will be
fun. So much to talk about.
So much to talk about. Where do you want to go first?
I don't know, man. It's so funny. I just wrapped up a show with one of our Front Row dads, a guy named Brandon Miller, and I asked him the exact same question to start. He's like, let's talk about fatherhood. And I said, that's a great place to go, man. You know, I love talking about everything, but I love talking about I always love talking about like what's relevant to whoever is part of the conversation. And I like talking about what's recent. You know, I like the present moment, even though I spent a lot of time thinking about what the hell just happened over the last couple of weeks or what's coming up in the future. But I like the here and the now. It tends to be very exciting. There's always something new to think about.
Yeah, for sure. So catch us up to speed. So what have you been doing the last 2 months with our good friend Corona here?
Yeah, man, we've been pouring into Front Row Dads. I want to say that I was trying my best to balance pouring into my family because, you know, my kids are home. There's a lot of things to think about as it relates to family.
Sure.
A lot of conversations that we needed to have. And at the same time, I felt very compelled to pour into Front Row Dads. So for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's a brotherhood of men who, I'd like to think are just incredible human beings who are wanting to be guys that build epic businesses and have epic families, but they want to make sure that they're in the right order. That if we get to the end of our lives and we built an epic business and felt like we failed at fatherhood, that would not be acceptable. Right. We want to win at home and build a great business, but just not at the expense of time with our kids or our wives. So I've been really struggling there, man. That's been where I've been trying to figure out a new normal. You know, what does my schedule look like, et cetera?
I'll tell you something. You had a massive impact on me. Probably was it about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, even when you were on the GoBundance call. And I want to share with all of our listeners one massive nugget that I took away. I think I might have even shared this with you. You said when you're listening as a dad or as a husband, even, you can come up with a fix it, right? You always say, we always want to fix things. And you said, why don't you pause for a second and ask the question, do you want me to fix this or feel this? That was powerful. I walked right upstairs and Dana was sharing something with me. And she said, hey, this, that, and the other. And I said, do you want me to fix that or do you want me to feel that? And she was blown away. She's like, what do you mean? You don't want to fix something for once?
Yeah. No, that's a good one, man. I once took a Sharpie marker and I wrote on my arm, stop coaching, right? Because it was just like, I could not help myself. I could not bite my tongue, it seemed.
Right.
And, we can learn. We can change.
We definitely can change and we can definitely learn. So speaking of changing and learning, what have you changed and what have you learned during this time?
Well, in any category or
sure. Yeah. You can either stay in your company's space, in the front row space, or even in family and life.
Well, let me give you what I think are the two big categories. So first, let me start with at home. One of the things that was shocking to me was that I felt like I was a pretty engaged dad, let's say 4 or 5 months ago. I would have given myself good marks on, I'm engaged. I spend time with my family. I'm present, right? I'm learning, I'm reading, I'm growing. I'm definitely not checked out.
Right.
But I will tell you that all of a sudden, having my kids with us full time and no travel, my learning curve, my ability to connect, my influence and how I was being influenced went through the roof. And I would have not predicted that. So on one hand, that was a pleasant change, right? Mm-hmm. That was something I was like, oh, that's kind of shocking. And I welcome that because it just is a reminder that you get a little arrogant at times, thinking you've got it figured out. I mean, look, a lot of guys get to that point in life. At least I noticed this, and I noticed it with myself, that you're like, yeah, I'm humble, I have a lot to learn, and then secretly you're like, and I know a lot of shit. You know, it's like,
Right.
it's like we know it's good to say that we're humble and we have a lot to learn, but deep down inside we're like, and I got a lot of shit figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's
Mm-hmm.
a danger in that. And so it was nice and refreshing in that sense to be reignited on as a dad at a new level. And it just got me thinking differently. We did things we've never done before. We built a garden in our backyard. I know I'm not alone on that. We had a fire pit that we built, and, you know, it dug the pit, found the rocks, and then we're like, why do we do fires only in the evening? Why don't we do fires in the morning? And we started doing morning fires. And then we're like, let's cook breakfast outside sometime. And I was like, you know, there's always something new to experience as a dad with your kids. And man, it was so fun. So that's been changing on the family front. And there's lots of things we could talk about, but that comes to mind. And then I think on the business side of things, what I would say that's what's been evolving is because I got super focused. It was almost like I got thrust into focus because I was juggling my time between being a keynote speaker and I was talking about, right, I was speaking on the charity Front Row Foundation. And then all of a sudden, when the speaking wall went away, I was like full-time, 100% front row dads.
Right.
And that focus, that refinement of like, oh my gosh, like I've got one thing on my plate that I really want to pour into. And I felt compelled to want to serve dads who are at this time in life where all of a sudden they were looking for more answers. They had to be a parent at a new level, right? They were like, wait a minute, schooling? We have to talk about, I have to be involved in this, right? Like, holy shit. So my business, I got hyper-focused. And I also found, I don't know if you found this, man, but I was waking up at like 2 and 3 in the morning. Totally. And I was like charged. It was like, I wasn't terrified of what was happening in the world, but I was on high alert. It was like I knew that something big was happening, and I didn't want to sleep. I wanted to be up and awake and aware and protecting my tribe. I wasn't standing out front with a shotgun, but I was just, right? I was just alert.
Sure. So hey, let's go into that real quick. So you're alert. Your kids are seeing this, which whether they had in the past or not, what do you think they took from that?
Yeah, well, you know, and this is something I shared on that call that we were both on, which is, and I credit my friend Akira Chan, who shared, what does your child conclude from all these conversations that not only are they involved in directly, but they might be overhearing, right? Like I recognize a lot of parents are having these business phone calls at home and they have big voices like I do, and your kids can hear a lot of it, right? They can, maybe they're listening in. I'm always surprised. I'm regularly surprised, although he shouldn't be, about what my 5-year-old picks up, right? And what he says about conversations. So, yeah, man, I think, where was I going with that? I mean, ultimately, here's what I think. I think that we're all learning a lot. I think that, you know, at the end of the day, what I'm finding is that I need to be adaptive and flexible with my kids in every moment. I need to be I need to be a listener, right? And I need to pay attention. Like you said at the very beginning when we were getting into this about like, if you really are listening to things, then you know what's going on.
Sure.
You know, that's kind of where I'm landing with all of this. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. So speaking of what you said with your kids watching and listening, my kids, my daughter, she's 9. She comes up to me, and I don't remember the framework of the conversation or even what was going on. She said, "Dad, are you frustrated?" I said, good question. And I didn't want to say, yes, I'm extremely frustrated. I said, you know what, there's some opportunities that Daddy has. And this is what she said, and they're watching. They're always watching. She goes, because when you get frustrated, your eyebrows scrunch up. I said, wow.
That's observant.
Very observant. And I have been frustrated in front of her many times if she noticed that, right? So that was one thing that I took away from this whole thing, is paying attention to how am I showing up in front of my children, number one, as a dad, number two, as a leader or an influencer of their lives. And then what can we do that's fun? What can we do that's exciting, as you were doing? Let's have a bonfire. Let's have a fire in the morning. right?
Yeah.
Let's cook breakfast outside. I think I shared this with you on that call, that fan abundance call. Is my kids are big tennis players, and unbeknownst to me, they massively love tennis so much that they decided they wanted to get up at 6:30 in the morning and go play tennis before school started. Now, that was music to my ears, and we did it. And my son lasted. My 9-year-old daughter didn't last that long, but it was definitely a fun experience for sure.
Yeah.
So now, what happens next, right? So we've learned, we've kind of transitioned, we've got these new norms now. What happens next now with Front Row Dads? What happens next? How does this? How have you pivoted, and what's going to happen next in the organizations and in the foundations?
Well, we're still guessing a lot about what happens down the road because, I was talking to Berghoff about this the other day.
Mm-hmm.
It's, do we just plan to go all virtual?
Right.
And I'm around the table with some guys that are thinking, hey, we're not expecting to be back in person till fall of 2021. And I hear that, and I hear that from really smart people. And I'm like, holy shit, guys. Like, I'm hoping we're back in person in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the optimist in me. Maybe it's because I love getting it together in person and I'm an extrovert. And I'm praying for that we are back in communication. I also know that we're all chasing our own confirmation bias with the news, right? So we're listening to and watching probably what we want to confirm. And I'm tending to lean towards people that are saying, hey, look, I think that we might have exaggerated some things. I think we did good in the beginning. We had an unknown. We pulled back. We were conservative. I think we're riding an old narrative. I think we need to get back into what are the actual facts and figures and be in a place of making empowered decisions. So what I think is that we're going to really try to just hold space for either option. Mm-hmm. So I'm planning on, I want to get back together in person, and I want to be not so committed to that I miss the opportunity to go virtual. Right. So I need to play. So for Front Row Dads, we want to serve men. We just need to serve them in the ways that we can. The truth is we have an opportunity to grow in all these areas. We have an opportunity to grow online and virtually. We have an opportunity to do things differently if we are in person and rethink things. And I think that's the real opportunity for everybody. I mean, the truth is, like, here's what's great about all this. You asked about the kids and how they're being impacted by all this high alertness and whatnot. And I think here's the deal. When your kids see you on high alert, and when everybody's being rocked by something, that pattern interrupt is an opportunity for something powerful to happen. Because a pattern interrupt of any type allows us to make a new choice. We're not sleepwalking. We're not so in our habits or so in our routines that, as much as habits help us, they also hurt us, right? Sure. Like, we need habits, and to create them and have them be automated as much as we need systems to break them and challenge them as well. In fact, guys have gone through a lot of that, right? They get to the point where you're like, I need to figure out my life. So we spend all this time figuring out how to get habits. Then we get habits and we get results. And then we actually start to experience the challenges of being in a life of habits and not having anything challenge it, where this is a giant global pattern interrupt at the highest level, which I love. It was good for the planet to have this. It was good for people to reevaluate. Look, even if we do go back to where we were, parents are going to be better parents because they took a harder look at education and asked what they really wanted. I mean, the amount of parents having the conversation around what does education really look like? What do we want for our children? That's what I made a post one time that kind of kicked up a little dust, but I was like, a lot of this, like, how do I homeschool, is really a parent saying, I outsourced all of that, didn't have to think about it, and now I'm being forced to.
Yeah.
Which is great. Mm-hmm. And the same thing is happening for our businesses. So I love it, man. I think, and I say I love it with great respect to the tragedy that many are facing. So I'm not ignorant to that, nor am I trying to rub it in somebody's face that's, just lost a loved one. And they're like, hey, good for you, John. Screw you. You don't have any compassion. It's like, no, I totally do. I also know that we need to look at all sides of this, including what can we be appreciative of and what can we love about all this.
Yeah, that's really, really good. That sounded like some Berghoff language there. That was good.
That's right.
So that's really good. That's a massive global pattern interrupt. I'd never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
So curiosity, as it relates to the pattern interrupt, so we're gonna have to change some habits, we're gonna change some focuses. Is there anything that you're doing now to learn to be better after this pattern interrupt, right? We talked about, are these new books you're reading? Are these different visions? Has this changed your vision? What's that pattern interrupt? I'm really fascinated by that word as it relates to this
Yeah.
of
Well,
it.
a pattern interrupt brings us into the moment.
Right.
That's what allows us to change. So when somebody's doing coaching with another example, with another person, if they're able to shock the system a little bit to some degree, you're all of a sudden brought right into the moment, hyper aware of what's going on. It's like, by the way, maybe I was just looking for an excuse to tell you a funny ass story, but last night I'm camping with my family, and we're in a tent, all of us. I'm laying next to my 10-year-old son, and he must have had a nightmare or something, or thought I was, he got scared, and somehow he smacked me in the face. Like I'm really hard, like not like his arm flopped over and hit me, but like he literally tried to hit me in the face. And he was sleeping, like, cause I grabbed his hand and I'm like, hey buddy, are you, like, I knew what happened. I knew there's no way, like he was asleep. He was having something in his sleep, or he turned over and he saw me and I don't know what it was. Right. But what happened was I view that a little bit like what happens in a pattern interrupt, where what it does is it immediately brought me out of my sleep. It immediately brought me into the moment. And as a result of that, I had to ask, what does all this mean? What does this mean to me? And that's the benefit of it. So what I'm getting right now, and what this means for the future, and what I'm doing with all of it, is I'm allowing it to say, who am I? Right? So one of my words, I don't know if I talked about this on the Go Abundance call, but the word I'm obsessed with is definition.
Okay. Tell us why.
And I'm writing this word of definition because it's like, what does it mean to be right? And I'm just what does it mean to be a father? If I just said to everybody out there who's listening who is a parent, define education. I think many of us would struggle to define that with real clarity. We would say, and we would stumble, but that means we're not really clear. We're kind of searching for our answer and kind of making it in the moment, right, of what we think it is. We're just pulling from our gut and, an opportunity for our children to learn and develop themselves. Like we would just pull, right? But we haven't really sat down and asked, what is it truly? And what is, like a lot of us, we haven't defined like our family values as an example. We haven't taken a minute to define our vision. A lot of us have been asked to redefine what our priorities in our company, because all of a sudden people start going, all right, cut the non-essentials. Right. Yep. Let's look at the budget and say, all right, let's define, what do we really need? This is all about refinement and definition and clarity. Because in moments like this, even I think about my family, I'm like, what does it mean to protect my family? Right. Like, and am I going to be that type of person? I'm like, I got to immediately build the bunker, or am I like, no, that's too much, but hey, it's probably not a bad idea to have like a little bit of like food and water just in case. And I realized for me that I had never really taken time to ask myself some of these questions that were about definition. And in a time when every move feels like matters the most, and that's where clarity helps. Yeah. So that's the space I'm living in right now. And it feels good. It feels good to have definition, right? It feels good to sit down with our team and say, let's look at this again. I like shaking it up in that way. And we've walked away stronger. Are there any areas that you are focusing more on in the word definition? Well, when it comes to meaning like in my life, what am I mostly trying to define more than anything else? Yeah. No doubt it would be education for my kids. Okay. And also what is our value prop for our dads, for our men's group? So with the kids, no doubt it's what do we do with their time, right? What is the definition of a good childhood? Or what is the definition of a thriving child? Because I don't subscribe to the fact that if the world tells me that my kid needs to do math at this level to be okay, I'm like, bullshit. Right. No, I don't subscribe to that. Like for me, but now the question of what is important for my child at this age to be experiencing, knowing what I know about the human brain and development and how much variety should they have and how much. So that conversation, man, I can't get enough of that right now.
Yeah.
Because I could outsource it. It's like, oh, I thought about school. Now you're at school, but now I don't have to think about it at all for like 7 hours. I don't have to think about it at all. It's just, I just trust your teacher. I just trust that whatever they're doing is probably better than what would be happening at home.
And that's a good sentence for the definitions. What is important for, and then I wrote down the word X. And what is important for X? And I think that's a really, really good way of looking at this. Man, that is valuable stuff. I wish we had more time to continue. I know we're right here on the time here. Well, let's do this. How can people learn more about Front Row Dads? How can people learn more about finding you when you're doing your keynote speaking, if that comes back to to life, or if they're doing it here on Zooms? How can they come find you?
The best place, I'm most active, frontrowdads.com. So if you know a dad, send them to frontrowdads.com. If you are a dad, go check it out. And if you're listening to this, chances are you like podcast. Front Row Dad podcast would also be a place to get some info and hear some great conversations, just exploring and being honest, right, about where we're failing, where we're having some wins.
Oh my gosh. And that podcast, there are so many great podcasts that you've done on that is incredible. The one with you and Hal, where he's talking about how to become a better husband. Oh, do you remember what episode, the number that is?
No, but there is a search feature on the site. Yeah, it's Hal Elrod who wrote The Miracle Morning. Yeah. Great show. Yeah, he was really good. Great
show. I bet I've listened to that one at least 3 times. So good. Well, everybody, my name is Adam Roach. I am your host of the I Love Recruiting podcast. This is Jon Vroman. He absolutely crushed it, as we knew he would. Front Row Dads, go check him out. He'll bring you massive value. That's all I have for today's show. Jon, thanks for being on.
Thanks, man.
All right.